Hi, my name is John Donovan. I'm here with Team Snapkeepgames, our first of many videos. And today with us we have Tyler Bailey,
Yep.
who, well, he's kind of a Legacy fan.
I am. I'm a big Legacy fan. I also recently spiked a Legacy event, which has propelled my career and brought me a lot of joy.
I believe it was Shardless Bug.
It was. I'm hoping to put Shardless back on the map, because it's been dead for a while.
Well, you're going to have an opportunity coming up soon with Grand Prix Columbus. So,
Very excited about that.
All right, so are you thinking you're going to stay on the Shardless train, or where are you headed?
I'm probably going to stay on the Shardless train. Because I have 2 buys, I'll be able to dodge a lot of the really wonky stuff. And where Shardless shines is top 8. If you can top 8 with Shardless, it's probably the best top 8 deck in the meta. Because the decks that often make it, I'm really good against.
Okay.
So it really helps out a lot.
So you think it's better positioned against the Tier 1 decks?
Yes, well, that's exactly what Shardless is. It's a Tier 1 eater. Whereas if I play it like a Tier 3 deck, it just crushes me in lanes.
Right, so if you run into the random, Abyss deck or something terrible.
Like Doomsday, I just can't beat that deck. Like, I have to dodge it.
It's so random, yeah. It's one of those decks that, Doomsday, it's hard to play, it's just not consistent enough. Where Shardless is a very consistent deck. All right, so top 8 killer. So what did you play in the top 8 of your event?
So round 1, I played against Storm, which is a very, very bad matchup for me.
You don't have a lot of.
I don't
have a lot of no. So
fortunately, in my sideboard, I do have some anti-storm stuff like Vendilion Click. People don't realize how powerful Vendilion Click is against Storm.
As someone who used to play ad nauseam tendrils back when Mystical Tutor was that long time ago, getting one key card stripped out of your hand can be awful.
Well,
so
the way I play it is I let them do their thing, and then as soon as they tutor up what they need, it's a sorcery, so I just click it away, and it's gone.
Right, so instant speed discard, that'd be a nightmare. That.
And granted, they get to draw a card, but 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be the card that they need to kill, the tendrils or the.
More often than not, it's going to be another land acceleration,
or
tutor, ritual factor, or a tutor that's going to slow them down and throw them off their math.
In theory, if they get a tutor, they're going to have to use the mana they had set aside for the tendrils, and then not have enough tendrils, and that's enough for me right there. Usually against Storm with Shardless, I need 1 turn. And it's like, whether the game took 5 turns, 10 turns, or 100 turns, it always comes down to 1 turn to win.
Exactly.
That's how it comes every time against Storm.
Rarely ever can they combo twice. And if they can, then you've done something wrong.
Right.
All right, so you...
And in that matchup, game 1, I'm just bricking. Like, I have a decent board state, but I'm basically bricking against Storm, and he goes for ad nauseam and knocks himself down to 1. And complete brick. I was stunned. I was just like, wow.
It happens.
Yeah,
it
happened to him. And he was upset.
Very rare. Oh, man, I've been in that seat, and that is such a sick feeling.
Yeah. Yep.
Such a sick feeling.
Yep. So game 2, he just turn 2s me. Game over. Like, nothing I can do. Game 3, I have a very well-timed Force of Will. I Force of Will one of his first Dark Ritual. So that sets him back a whole turn. And that gave me a turn to swing with 2 Goyfs, getting him down to around 7 life. I think it was like 7 life. And I still have 2, 3, 4 Goyfs on the board. So I'm only showing 6 power. And so I pass the turn to him. He's at 7. He tries to do his thing, but at that point he's pretty much dirtling. And he passes back to me. I cast a Baleful Strix. And then cast a Liliana. And Edict to myself. To put a creature and an artifact.
And make the Goyfs lethal.
Yep.
Excellent.
And that got me game 3.
Little tricks like that are things that a lot of players miss. And that's
absolutely.
Especially in the Legacy format that is so incredibly complicated, so diverse. It's inches. It's really a format of inches.
Millimeters, basically.
Yeah.
Like 1 life, no format is 1 life more important than Legacy.
I mean, it's the fetch land format that matters more than any other.
Yep.
We just went through an entire standard season of fetching.
Yeah.
But fetching in standard and fetching in Legacy are 2 completely different animals,
Correct.
Especially when you play Brainstorm.
And Wasteland.
Yes.
When you're up against Wasteland, it's just like, you have to be really careful how you do it. And Brainstorm, again, like, you can't just be fetching frivolously. You oftentimes, I'll have 2 fetches on the board just sitting there waiting for a Brainstorm.
Absolutely. And, or in standard, we were throwing a fetch on the table and cracking it right away.
Instantly.
In modern, you can fetch whenever. It doesn't really matter.
A lot of
end of turn fetching, so you can put in a shock line tapped, but it's not really it's not at all how fetches work in Legacy.
In Legacy, I find myself fetching during my upkeep.
Yeah.
If I have a brainstorm and I want to dig
a little deeper.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So you got past Storm. Then what you go on to next?
So the next round, actually the tournament started to get a little wonky at that point. The rest of my opponents didn't want to play any more Magic. They wanted to go home.
At the end of those long days.
Yeah. And so I was willing to split the prize, like all the prizes. I was from top 8 on. I was just like, I'll split ticks all day. Like I don't care, but I'm here to play for points. And they didn't really like that. They were kind of like, why am I doing that? But it's Magic. They can't do anything against it. And so my next opponent was Death and Taxes.
I love Death and Taxes.
Yeah, it's not a great matchup for me because it really messes with my Cascades. But game 2 and 3, I just board out my Shardless and board in all my control, and they can't win. Like they just can't. So he scooped to me, just flat out didn't play a single game of Magic and scooped to me. And so I go into the finals. My opponent is on Miracles, and he had been watching me play all day, and I played 5 Miracles matches and completely crushed all 5.
Oh Lord!
So he scooped to me as well. He just did not want to play because Miracles. My build of Shardless is a Miracles slaughterhouse. Like Miracles comes to me to die.
What is different about yours?
3 Hymn to Torok. 3 Hymn to Torok is huge.
Love it because and even against some of the random decks can get throughout. Like, it's against a burn deck, it saves you 6
MVP.
damage.
It was my MVP of the weekend. All the other spells are what won the games for me, but Hymn to Torok is what locked them all up. Because I just hymn them, and even if I don't hit the strong cards, I'm getting 2 cards out of their hand. And against Shardless, I'm going to be gaining so much advantage at that point.
Oh, especially if you
can't keep up.
If you cascade into it, that's just...
It's gross.
It's
super gross.
It harkens back to the days when we used to pay 4 mana and then get a Blight.
Yeah. Lightning was a great card.
Missed those days, but Shardless into him and happening to turn quicker and random discard, that's...
My favorite feeling in Shardless is turn 1 Deathrite, turn 2 Shardless Agent into Hymn to Torok. It's just gross. I have a 2/2, a Deathrite, and I just took 2 cards.
That's far too much tempo for most decks in the format to combat.
Which is why I really love the deck.
Fair. So, thinking about that moving forward and where the format is, so what are your thoughts on what you think Columbus is going to look like?
So, a lot of people ported over their modern decks, their Eldrazi's, into Legacy, which is great for me on Shardless because I crush Eldrazi. Unless they nut draw me, and then there's nothing I can do about it. No deck in Legacy beats the Eldrazi nut draw.
It's funny you mentioned that deck because as soon as I saw the results from that first event where Eldrazi had the breakout in Modern, I immediately looked at my Ancient Tombs and my City of Traders, and I was like, so this just gives me more Eye of Ugins and more Eldrazi temples.
I remember when the deck first came out, I was holding my Sneak Show deck, thinking to myself, I should get rid of this deck because I don't ever play it anymore. Like I don't need the lands. And I saw that deck, and I was like, wait a minute. This deck looks gross. And it really is. And there's so many variants. There's like 5 variants of Legacy Eldrazi now, which is sick. Like, that's really cool in itself. That was too powerful for Modern, and I understand that. But in Legacy, it's really cool that one deck can take on multiple forms. And each form be very viable.
Yeah, and and here's the difference. In Legacy, that deck can be multiple forms, but it's not so soul-crushing.
Yeah, well, it is soul-crushing, but it's not as soul-crushing as Modern.
I was about to say, it's not as soul-crushing as it was in Modern, where it was just...
When they turn to Reality Smasher you, it's very hard to recover from. It's just very hard to recover from that.
Yeah, well, and, talking about a format like Legacy or Delver, let's talk about tempo decks and what they do in that format. It's more tempo than any. Delver, if I see if a Reality Smasher lands against Delver, they're probably just dead.
Yeah, they can't beat a Reality Smasher. They don't have any edict effects, so they can't get rid of it. And to target it, they have to discard a spell. Like they have to discard gas.
So to double bolt it off the board, it's going to cost them 4 cards.
Which is not
in a deck that's so tempo, it just can't do it.
Like the best thing they have, Delver, I just don't think Delver can beat Eldrazi. Because if Eldrazi wins a dice roll, they just turn 1 Chalice. They just mulligan to a turn 1 Chalice. I've done it. I've mulliganed down to 4 just to hit a Soul Land and a Chalice, cast it and sit, and I've won. Because they can't
shutting off Brainstorm,
it shuts off basically the whole deck.
Delver shutting off Bolts, shutting off way too much.
Basically, any variant, if it's blue-red, it shuts off almost the entire deck. If it's Grixis, it shuts off all but like 3 cards.
Right, but
they have Gurmag Angler. That's about it.
Yeah, and you can deal with all of it.
Yeah.
It's not at that point your guys are just better.
Yeah, well Gurmag matches right up with Reality Smasher, and I just swing into their Gurmag, kill it, and then swing with my 2/2s.
God forbid you land a Thought Nuts here.
Yeah, oh my god.
Take the Gurmag out of their hand or the Tasker out of their hand, and they're just just dead.
Yeah, the other thing about Thought-Knot is Delver has a really hard time killing Thought. So you're basically
out of bolt range.
Yeah, you're basically just getting a 4/4 body and stealing a card, and that's really hard.
What would you say is the best removal spell in Legacy?
Abrupt, hands down, bar none.
Abrupt Decay?
Yep.
So,
nothing competes with it. Like Swords is
that's the
nipping at
card.
the heels.
Swords of Plowshares is a card I was going to mention.
Yeah, it nips at the heels of it, but see, Abrupt Decay hits enchantments, it hits artifacts, it hits, and it's uncounterable. In Legacy, uncounterable, that ability is God.
Oh, I agree. I'm not from playing a lot of Abrupt Decay in Standard and Modern as well. I look at Abrupt Decay and that is one of my favorite cards. The reason I bring it up is Plow. I'm a Death and Taxes player.
Sure.
That is the deck that I love that deck. I take a different angle on it.
It's a great deck.
But Swords of Plowshares, like that's the card that allows that deck to
it's what propels
compete.
the deck. Yeah, for sure.
Because it has to get those threats like a Reality Smasher, like
and you have to just be willing to discard that card, Reality Smasher, because you have to get rid of it.
Oh yeah,
it will kill you. Too fast too.
Well, in that deck where you're talking all bears, small guys, you're not gonna compete against. Well, I mean, that's something that Shardless Bug, it kind of has an advantage in that it's not all just bears. Yes, it's named after a bear, but it has the best, worst slotted in green card ever. Should have been a blue card.
Really?
Basically, is a blue card.
Yeah.
It's Tarmogoyf.
Yep.
I think that card still. I mean, what's your opinion on that card in the Legacy format?
It is a wrecking house because it's so easy to hit, make it a 4/5, and as a 4/5, it matches up and kills almost every creature in the format, except for like Gurmag Angler, Reality Smasher. There's not many big creatures in this format. So when you have a 4/5, that's very powerful. If it gets to a 5/6, 6/7, 7/8, it's like the game's just
more often than that. Then it's just too much value.
Yeah.
That you've got for 2 mana.
Yeah, and particularly in Shardless, I play a lot of creatures, instant sorceries, artifacts, and I run enchantments. So it's really easy for me to hit a 7/8 Goyf. Like that is not out of the range for me. I do it constantly. And I also play one Bitter Blossom on my board if I think Miracle's gonna be really heavy, and that gets me tribal, making an 8/9 Goyf.
Okay, so we've covered that. You're playing Brainstorm, which is
probably the most broken card in Magic.
That's legacy legal. Yes.
Okay, sure. All right. You got me.
As the Eternal weekend was just announced,
Vintage is a thing.
Right.
Vintage is definitely a thing.
And Ancestral is definitely a thing.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Which is Brainstorm's bigger brother. But so and we Tarmogoyf, if you're playing that, which we think I agree with you. It's always a well positioned card in the format.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about what you expect are going to be the popular decks. So first, let's talk about the good matchups for you as a Shardless Bug player.
Okay. So I can kind of do this simultaneously. So one of the decks that's going to be really popular that I already mentioned is Eldrazi. And their biggest cornerstone is Chalice on 1. That doesn't affect me at all. Like, it shuts down my death rates and my brainstorms, but I have Abrupt Decay. So I against Eldrazi, I'm always going to hold my Abrupt Decay for their Chalice on 2. Because any smart Eldrazi player against Shardless is going to put in a Chalice on 2. Because that shuts down my Tarmogoyfs, my Baleful Strix, my Hematorax, all my really messed up spells.
It gets more of the shuts off more of the power of the deck.
Right. Meanwhile, it's still susceptible to my Abrupt Decays, but at least you're shutting down my power until I can get to the Abrupt Decay.
Right.
So, and like Chalice on 1, you're just shutting down my Brainstorms and my Death Rates, which doesn't hurt me very much. I'm just going to put a Tarmogoyf on the board and laugh at it. Like, it's just kind of how that goes. Another one, obviously, is Miracles. That is everywhere all the time. It's the #1 deck in the format, period. Fortunately for me, it's my best matchup in the entire meta. So that's why I really like Shardless, because I don't like it's not that I don't like Miracles. I want to beat it. I just want to be able to beat it, and I don't ever want to play the mirror.
Why would you say that Shardless is so well positioned against Miracles?
It's the advantage and Abrupt Decay. Everything goes down to Abrupt Decay. The reason Shardless is so powerful is because it's the best deck at utilizing Abrupt Decay.
In the Legacy format.
In the Legacy format, correct. They put a counterbalance down on Abrupt Decay. They put a top down, they try to do top tricks. I love it. And my favorite thing is they try to put their top on top and I just Abrupt Decay. And a lot of players don't see the value in why I do that. But when you take away Miracle's card advantage and you're making them play a regular game of Magic against Shardless, where I'm not playing a regular game, I'm playing fair game, but I have so much advantage. Like, I'm just drawing cards constantly. And then I cast a Shardless Agent and hit a Goyf, and Miracles basically can't beat that. And the biggest thing is I just 2 creatures at a time against Miracles. I just put 2 creatures out, attack. They Terminus, 2 creatures, attack.
In other words, you're planning on a mid to long game against them.
Always.
So that
You have to. If you try to race them, they're gonna get there and they're gonna beat you. You just have to 2 creatures, attack. They'll get rid of them. You just put 2 more out. And Creeping Tar Pit is the MVP in that matchup. That card is ridiculous in that matchup.
Well, any man land and that's cheap to activate and is that powerful. Yeah.
Well, it's the unblockable.
Unblockable, yeah.
Because it'll often eat a Jason Mind Sculptor. It can eat a Lily. Well, they don't have Lily, but you get my point. It eats a lot of Planeswalkers, which can be the really downside against Shardless. Because Resolve Jason Mind Sculptor basically beats Shardless. So you have to be able to get rid of it very fast, or they're just going to get too much advantage of that.
Well, that card beats a lot of it.
Exactly. I mean, it's Jason Mind Sculptor.
There's a reason that he was, there's a reason he was banned in Standard.
Right. I mean, I also feature one in my deck. I just feel like if I'm on blue, I have to have 1 Jace. Like, it's an alternative win. So that's enough for me.
Far too often.
Yeah.
Because he's one of the blockers. I miss the walkers having a bomb that was an auto win like that.
Yeah,
like,
agreed.
I mean, it wasn't an immediate that turn, but it was.
It's a win con. It's
right.
a Walker win con. Like,
right.
The only other real good one, I think, is, well, from that era, would be like Johnny Vengeance. You can Lightning Bolt constant.
Yeah.
That's a really good mechanic. Other than that, most of the other walkers are just lockdown pieces. They're not going to finish the game off.
Right. Well, and some of them do, and some of them, Chandra at Standard.
Oh, yeah, that
card's a hardcore finisher, but
it's going to make its way into Legacy. I feel it coming.
Really?
6 is a little hefty, but I think for like the mid-rangey decks, which do exist, like Nick Fit, I think you put that, if that card hits the board, I don't think Legacy can beat that. Like, it's just so powerful.
It avoids Abrupt Decay.
Which
is there's no 1-for-1 removal for walkers pretty much in that format. Cause
not that's played.
Right, no one's running Hero's Downfall or Ruinous Path or anything like that. Or even Dreadbore, because it's still just not good enough.
Right.
Wow, yeah.
So, like, if the card resolves, you're going to win.
You mentioned Nick Fit, and Big Garrick was, one of the Garricks was in there, and that card was just...
It's a monster. It's a monster. In regular rounds of the Classic in Baltimore, the only game I lost was to Nick Fit. In the entire Classic, I lost 1 game, and it was to Nick Fit. And I don't think Shardless, barring a God draw on Shardless and them bricking, I don't think Shardless can beat Nick Fit. I just don't think it's possible. I can't beat a Sea Drano. I just can't beat that card. I cannot do anything against that card.
Are we talking about Legacy or Modern?
Legacy, I know. Well, I was sitting down when he cast the first Sea Drano on me. I was like, wait, what? Excuse me? And he beat me with it. Like, he just crushed me.
It's funny you mention that because I had a similar experience where I did something like that in a format where the last time there was a real vintage top 8, there was an event here in Chicago, and it was Star City Games.
Right.
But right before World Championships, one of the early Vintage Worlds, Future Sight had released. And I decided I was going to play Green-White Hate Bears. And I showed up to a Vintage event here in Chicago with Hate Bears, with Tarmogoyf as a 4 in my deck. And walked to the top 8.
Yeah.
And got to top 4, and outside of a player would have been in top 2 with Tarmogoyf in the deck. 2 weeks later, Vintage Championships. My only losses that day were once in Swiss to the guy who won the tournament, and once in the top 8 to the guy who got second in the tournament. Running Tarmogoyfs all day.
Seems good.
Beat a deck in that format that I know is a deck that would potentially be difficult for you in the Legacy format, which is Dredge.
Yeah, I can't. I have to land a Graph Diggers. I have to. Or a turn 1 Deathrite. And turn 1 Deathrite doesn't even lock me in. I have to land a Graph Diggers, or I'm going to lose. Like,
it's just that.
It's too fast, too powerful. Like, my Glyph doesn't match up well against 10 2/2 zombies. I can't, my 2/2 Shardless Agent is a vanilla 2/2 after it's cast, and they have 10, 20 zombies that are 2/2s. Like, my Baleful Strix, again, is just a 1-creature system when they have tons of zombies.
How often do you see that deck in the book?
Often.
Often?
It's the #1 budget deck.
Okay.
Hands down.
What other decks do you normally see? I know you play on the East Coast a lot, where there's a lot more Legacy happening.
Right.
So,
Do you mean like what do I see in the field, or what am I looking to dodge?
Field.
Oh well, the beauty of Legacy is it's always going to be very diverse. So you're going to see probably 25% miracles, 20% miracles, and of the rest of the 80%, it's a guessing game. It's just strictly a guessing game.
20 plus decks easy.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many homebrews in Legacy that are viable. Like people brew decks strictly to beat miracles. So if they get matched up against miracles repeatedly, they're gonna sweep. Same thing goes for like matchups against aggro decks. Aggro decks in Legacy are very fast. Burn in Legacy is another matchup that I have a very, very hard time with because they just get there so fast. And my card advantage doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I mean it's a step faster than the modern burn, which is
It's like
already
2 steps faster.
right, which is already a really good deck.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
I don't think I could beat modern burn with Legacy Shardless, honestly. I really don't think I
it
could.
wouldn't shock me. Well, I mean, a lot of times when you take a deck like Legacy that is specific for that format,
Right.
and you try to play against decks in the other formats, like we talked already about Siege Rhino.
Yeah.
I don't think you could beat modern Abzan.
No, oh my god, no. There's too much.
They have the same abrupt decays that you do,
Yep.
and then they have rhinos to just go over the top.
Yep. Notice abrupt decay my Goyfs and
Yep.
cast a Rhino, and I'm dead.
Yeah. So let's talk about then. And this is something you and I have talked about before, but I'd like for some people to get an idea of what it's like when you approach sideboarding going into an event. You mentioned that you look at your 60, and your 60's pretty 58 are
I
usually
have
solid.
2 flex
Right,
slots.
right,
Yep.
and that's very the same for like if you're building Grixis,
Yeah.
Grixis Delver or Delver, you always have 2 flex slots.
Yep.
So duo one around Spell Pierce, Spell Snare, or whatever.
Yep.
But after that, it's pretty set in the 60.
Yeah.
It's those last 15 where you said you have up to 45 cards.
Yes. I maintain a 45 card sideboard. And
That's a lot.
My rationale for that is Shardless is an amorphous deck. It is designed to be the top tier decks, but it loses to the lower tier. So what I do the night before a major Legacy event is I sit there and try to figure out what I think the meta is going to be. I try to get as many opinions for whatever area I'm in, because areas are very specific. Like around here, Caleb Scherer is local-ish, so Storm is very prevalent,
Yes.
which is a nightmare for me. So if I was to play here, part of my 15 would probably be 5 anti-Storm cards. I probably have 2 clicks. I probably would end up on Flusterstorms and go with the board out Shardless package and and meddling mages.
Right, and go to more control.
Yeah. So the idea of my 45 is all 45 of those cards are viable against at least one matchup.
Okay.
And in Legacy, having silver bullets can be very powerful and can be very deadly too. Because like if you have 3 or 4 silver bullets on your board and you don't ever see those decks, you've just now wasted all those slots.
Right, right.
And that is a killer. That crushes you. That will crush you in this format. So I really carefully pick my 15 based on what I believe. So like in Baltimore, I knew for a fact that it was going to be heavy, heavy miracles. Because I know all the players in my local area, and a lot of them are miracle players.
Okay.
So what I did was I just boarded against miracles and prayed that I dodged dredge. Like I did.
So you ran without the cage that day.
I had 1 cage, but I had no
Okay.
real other dredge heat. So my move was to just crush miracles. I wanted to just obliterate miracles.
Well,
and I did.
that's a little scary because even one sideboard card against Dredge isn't enough.
Right.
Just one Grafter of cages. You need usually to beat them. You need 5 or 6
Precisely.
minimum, and you need to draw 2.
Yeah. Well, in the games I've won against Dredge, I've just aggressively mulliganed to my Grafter. And if I get down to 5 and I haven't hit it yet, the game's over. I'm going to lose. There's just nothing I can do if I don't hit a Grafdigger's Cage very early. If I land a turn 1 Grafdiggers, though, oftentimes Grafdigger's Cage will just win me the game. I've had Dredge players, if I turn 1 Grafdigger's Cage, scoop the cards up and go to the next game. Which is nothing but an amateur's move. Like you make them kill you. That's like the most important thing that every pro has told me. Make your opponent kill you. Because you never know, one life you come back.
Well, how many times? This is a perfect example from your event. How many times do players scoop in the ad nauseum results?
A lot. And I sat there and I watched him and I made him go through it and he bricked. And I won because of it.
So, yeah, back to the sideboard. So, do you have any cards that are just auto include in your 15, or is it literally that fluid?
So there's the cards that often make the cut, but there is not one card in my board. Graph Diggers. I have to keep one Graph Diggers at all times because it's just very valuable against so many decks. But the other 14, I fluctuated them all often. Like Dismember is really good now because of Eldrazi, so I've recently added 2 of them to my 45. Disfigure is really good, but some metas Disfigure is worthless. Like it's just literally worthless. So you just don't want it. Is there anything else I think? If I'm running the 3 Ancestral Vision 3 Force of Will version of the main deck, then I have a Force of Will automatic in my board.
Probably for
Storm.
Combo matchups.
Yeah. Sneak and Show, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But lately I've decided because of the meta shift, 4 and 4 of Ancestral Visions and Force of Will is the right move.
Are you talking about the Eldrazi meta shift?
Eldrazi. So Eldrazi beats Miracles pretty well, and as a result, people are gearing up against Eldrazi.
Okay.
So what I want is to just be able to shut down whatever wonky stuff they're doing to beat Eldrazi. Because stuff that beats Eldrazi hurts me a lot usually. Because it's usually big creature removal.
That's a double.
Yeah.
That's a double problem.
Exactly. So often, warping in this format is very real. So when I spiked the Classic in Baltimore, I showed up to Columbus to play in that Classic with Shardless again.
And I remember you were thinking about not playing Shardless.
Yes, I was exactly thinking about not because I just spiked. So round 1 of the Classic, I sit down, and my opponent goes, "Oh, you're the guy who just won the Classic last week. You're on Shardless." And I was like, "Great." He sits down then and proceeds to tell me, "I really hope you're on Shardless because I'm here to beat Shardless." And I was just like, "Cool. Great. And obviously I lost that match.
Oh, yeah. And sometimes there's almost a danger to being a known player.
Precisely.
Which is why, like, I played Legacy a lot. Like, I played Legacy for years and years and years. Here in Chicagoland, we had a store that ran, or we had an event that was ran at one store, it closed. It got moved to a college, and I ran it there, and then it moved to finally a different store. It's been running for almost 15 years.
That's amazing.
So we had a crowd that, multiple Legacy
Diehards.
top 8 champions.
Yeah.
I've spiked quite a few events myself in Legacy. It's been we love that format.
Yeah, for sure.
And a very competitive environment. I was lucky in that no one really knew who I was when I showed up in Kansas City playing this deck that no one had seen in the U.S. before called Maverick.
Yeah.
It was at the time Rug
was
huge and reigning supreme. And I show up with this deck that crushes Rug. Absolutely wrecking ball.
Yeah. It devastates.
And proceeded to, and that was the first event I made camera. I made camera twice that day, including beating Alex Bertini on camera.
That's always nice.
And it was actually a 5-minute game that was on camera because I crushed him that fast.
Wow.
I wastelanded and plowed his guy, and then got a Crucible with Wasteland.
Yeah, that's it.
Because
can't beat that card.
Death and Taxes is a deck that's definitely a real thing in the format.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's actually a direction I go. Is every time I run Death and Taxes, I run a Crucible.
Yeah, seems right.
Crucible in that deck, there's so many value lands that you want to replay. I actually upped the Horizon Canopy account as well because I wanted to have additional draw.
Yeah, I mean, it's powerful. Drawing one card is very powerful.
Yeah, and drawing a card every single turn
for
one colorless mana.
Yeah.
Think about that in a Miracles matchup. And that's how, in the Death and Taxes player, I attack that matchup. It's actually how I compete against Shardless because I'm able to draw enough.
Yeah, you're able to basically keep up with me in card draw.
And I go a different route in that I run Leonin Arbiter.
Yeah, that's good.
And how many, I played against Elves, which is another deck we haven't mentioned. Leonin Arbiter actually crushes them. They're in so much trouble when they can't natural order, and they can't Green Sun Zenith for any value at all.
Yeah.
And he put them in a bad spot, and their mana base is so incredibly tight and so fragile. Wastelanding them or Ghost Quartering them, which I run into of in the deck, and with a Leonin Arbiter in play, and they actually can't come back.
Yeah, I mean, Elves has 6 mana sources total.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's fetches.
Two of them are Dryad Arbiters.
Right. Fetches, a couple of duels maybe.
I have a Legacy Elves list. I have 2 Bayou, 2 Forests, 2 Dryad Arbor.
Yeah.
That's it for mana sources.
Yeah.
And other than fetches.
Imagine, your Bayou gets wasted, your Ghost Quarter on a basic, Ghost Quarter on a basic.
That's it.
You're done.
Yeah, that's it.
So, yeah, I mean, the format, I agree. The format is so incredibly diverse. It's one of the funnest formats to play.
Without a doubt.
Columbus is coming up soon, and sure you're thinking about which of those 45.
Honestly, I probably won't decide until Friday night of Columbus.
Yeah, I mean, that
This
doesn't
is how
shock
it
me at
always
all.
works. I'll be writing out my list. I'll write the first 5 side records that I know I want, and I'll sit there for 2 hours deciding the list.
Right, and I'm sure you'll look at some results of recent events
Of course,
too,
yeah,
and
that's
see what's going on, because we do have on top of the Star City events, which obviously are big information pool.
Yes, they're the best information pools for Legacy now.
There's also all the results from online events, and I do look at European events as well.
I look at European, so I have a weird take on the online events. I do not use online event information for my meta at all, because everything I've heard about Legacy Online is that Miracles is very cheap to build, and so is Eldrazi. So it's like 80% of the meta is split between Miracles and Eldrazi, and that in itself is not going to generate any valid information.
So it prevents the diversity that
Right. It's you're getting very warped information. People who meta off of online lose in paper. Period. They just lose in paper because it's so different. Papers, when you're playing paper Magic, it's always going to be way more diverse because you're always going to have the budget players who just want to go play in an event where they are playing against people they've seen on TV.
Yep.
That's like a very big thing. And the problem is with Shardless, I lose to those people.
Especially when they show up and they're like, mountain.
Yeah, oh my god. Basic Mountain. I don't think you can beat Basic Mountain. It's rough.
It's actually just the best card.
It's rough, man. They go Basic Mountain Lightning Ball. I'm like, oh, great.
And next.
Yeah.
Not even fetching for it, just
Basic Mountain, maybe.
right, and like an 8th edition whiteboard.
No.
So, all right, well, I think we had a good talk about the format. Good talk about Shardless, and your sideboarding strategy is one that I think people need to consider.
For Shardless, for sure. People who stick with a main 15 sideboard, they'll be able to do well if they top 8. That's where the catch is with Shardless. It's so hard to top 8 with Shardless, and it's all about the board. Shardless is all about your board. Shardless is built on consistency.
Right.
So when you're playing a consistent system, things that beat it wreck you. So you need to have those 15 in there to make that up.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks a lot for
Absolutely.
sitting
Thank
down
you.
today.
Thank you for the
And
interview.
hope you have a good time this weekend. Well, hey, thanks a lot for joining us today. Thanks again, Tyler, for coming on, and we'll hope to see you next time.
Have a good night, everybody.